Good evening. My name is Avery Clark, and today I will be sharing with you some tables I've made in SQL and the stored procedures to add to those tables. Up first, for the Shopify project, we have the product table. Obviously, product ID is going to be that primary key for this table. And we've set that to auto number, as you can see down here with identity specification being turned on to yes. And then we have category ID, which I've set to be a foreign key in this table, as you can see through this column. What that means is when you input a new product into this table, when you input the category ID, if it does not match with a category ID from the categories table, because of course this foreign key is the primary key of the categories table, then it will not allow you to input that product. Just another way to maintain data integrity. And we have some other columns and their associated data types. Obviously our numerics, default value of 0, so you don't have to input those every time, or the user doesn't have to. And then obviously numerics different from integer in the fact that numerics you can add, subtract, divide, etc. You can calculate them, whereas integers just they're just representative. And then in varchar for text, obviously, even including text outside the English language. So how do we add to this table? We use a stored procedure, specifically this one that I've called save product. Obviously, this uses my database, and we're altering this procedure. And here is the information that the user is going to input. These are the fields that they fill out. The product name, and this is the data type, so that they input the correct type of data into the correct columns. So product name, category ID, etc., all with their specific data types. But after the user inputs this, and before we actually let it go through to the table, we do a bit of a data constraint here. With this, we begin with this if statement. And what this means is if in the products table, specifically in the product name column, if any of the product names or any of the things in the product name column are equal to the product name input by the user, then we print, sorry, we already have a product with that name, and return, which just means you stop running. So basically, if they try to add a product that is already in the product table, and we tell that by checking what the product name is. If they try to add one that's already there, we say, oh, we already have a product with that name, and we stop running. However, if they get past this data constraint, then we go down here, and we will insert into the products table, specifically into these columns, this information. So we are inserting, they're sort of paired. Product name here, category ID here, like this. And the values that we input, we're going to get from up here, from the user. So the user inputs these, they get drawn down here, and these are inserted into the products table. Cost times 1.5 is the sales price. So we don't make the user input the sales price. We calculate that ourselves. And since these are just paired, the system knows that product name, this is for product name. And since this is the fifth or so, that it corresponds with this. And then select when we are displaying this data from the products table. We are going to order it by product ID descending. So it's going to go product ID 1, 2, 3, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, let's move on to the categories table. Again, category ID, which is the foreign key in the products table, is the primary key in this table. So it is an integer. And we've set it to auto number. So you don't need to type those in. They create themselves. Identity specification down there. And it's a lot of numerics. So lots of default value of 0. And since most of these you would not know, most of these types of data you would not know when you're entering a new category, the stored procedure to create a category is a bit shorter. There's less for the user to input because they would not know the number of sales when they're creating a category, or they likely would not. And these are all calculated later. So again, using my data set, altering this procedure, which I've called add a category. And the category name is the thing that's being added. And that's obviously text. So we made it in varchar, so you could also include accent marks, etc. But just like in the storage procedure for the products, we are going to do a little bit of a data constraint beforehand. So once they input the category name, the system is going to check if anywhere in the database categories, so not the database, excuse me, in the table categories, specifically where in the category name column, if anything in here matches this, which is, of course, what they input up here in category name. And if it does, then we're going to begin this process. We're going to print, sorry, I already have a category with that name, and return. So it's going to stop running. Again, just another way, just like the products table, to make sure that no one is entering a category that already exists, just to maintain data integrity. So, but that if that is not the case, if that does not exist, then we will bypass it and we will insert into the categories table, specifically into the categories column, sorry, the category name column, we are going to insert this value. And then the rest of them, all the default zeros, they will be default 0, all the nulls will be nulls. So this is the only thing you need to put in. And then we're displaying it down here. And just to illustrate how this works, I will illustrate this foreign key. That's what I'll do. So we will go to the add a product, sorry, save a product, stored procedure. Oh, where is that? And what this means, so execute, is that category ID for products, I believe I only have 3 categories. Category ID, obviously 1, 2, and 3 because they auto number. So I'm going to put in category 10. And let's just say this is a tree and there's 1, 1, 1. What this should do is it should not allow this because the foreign key, which is category ID, checks with the primary key in the category table, and it double checks to see that this is a value that's allowed. Click OK. It's not allowed. There we go. The insert statement conflicts with the foreign key constraint. There we go. It worked as intended. So then if we go to the products table and we edit the rows, view the data, yeah, there's nothing with a category ID of 10, which simply is not allowed. Yeah, and then here's some of the data I've got. We sell books, appliances, and decorations. These are different categories. Stock quantities, I mean, everything from the table is imported here. It's the product ID. And if we move on from the Shopify project, so we will go ahead and exit out of these. We will take a look at the hotel project. All right. Here's the room type table. Obviously, primary key being room type ID, auto numbered, etc. And if we look to add to the room type, this stored procedure, very similar to the ones we've been over so far, using my data. This is what it's called. Room type, we're altering it. These are the inputs that the user will put in. And again, another data constraint to see if the name of the type of room is equal to the name of the type of room that is input by the user. Then we print, sorry, we already have a room type with that name. If that is not true and is a different room type, then we will insert it into the room type table. We will insert these specific values, which correspond to these specific values. These values get inserted here. And then we show the data. Fairly straightforward again. I do not know why it's red squiggly underlined. If I execute, it executes fine. So yeah, unsure about that. Let's see. Let me take a look at the data under room types. This is all the data. We have 4 types: suite, twin, deluxe, executive. Their prices. It's auto numbering, obviously. Let me add a room type. The type name will say a double suite. I don't really know what that means. I'm just illustrating how this works. Number of rooms that we have in that type, we'll say there are 5 double suites. Bed type, let's say it's a queen bed. Bed number, let's say 2. That's where the double suite comes from. Price per night, 300. Select OK. And it's added here into the room types. Well, except for the fact that I did not refresh, obviously. There we go. The double suite, whatever that really means. Yep. So that's how you execute the stored procedure. Very similar to the Shopify project in how it's run. Now I'll look at the rooms. And again, we have another foreign key. Room type ID obviously is the primary key of the room type table right over here, but it's a foreign key in this table. So when you input a room, you have to put in a room type. And when you put in a room type, this foreign key will look over here in this room type table and double check that it exists there. So I cannot create a room with a room type that doesn't exist. The room type is sort of a prerequisite for creating a new room. That makes sense. Numerics. We have a bit to see if this is booked. So a 0 or a 1, a yes or a no. Size, floor. Obviously, whether it's booked or not would be not really done when you add it, but it's good to have in this room ID table or the room table, I think, even though I'm sure there'd be a lot of programming behind actually getting it to update and be able to change. Yeah, and the stored procedure, add room. Let's look at this. Very similar to the other ones. My database, we're altering add a room. These are the inputs for the user. But after they input and before we let them do anything, we are going to double check that what they've typed in actually makes sense and won't screw with the data integrity. So if anywhere in the room number column of the rooms table, a room number is equal to the room number here, then we're going to say we've already got a room with that number. And return, we're going to stop running. But if that is not the case, we will insert into the rooms table, specifically into these columns, these values, which have been input here. And then, I mean, I didn't really go over this, but the columns I added were room number, whether it's booked or not, which is a bit, the size and square footage in the floor. And then we show the rooms. So let's just execute that. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, room type ID, the value, we will say 1, which means, what does that mean? Let's see here. If we pull this up, edit, that means we have a suite. So room 1 is going to be a suite. There's the execute. All right. So you have a suite. Room number 101, let's say. Is it booked? Yes. Size 300 for 1. Now on purpose, I've picked a room that we already have in the system. So when I run this, return value 0, and the message is, I already have a room with that number. There we go. It just shows the data constraint working effectively to keep our data safe. So we are not adding anything incorrect here. But let's just go ahead and show one that works. So we will add a room. Value for the room ID, we'll say 1, so it is a suite. Room number 305. Booked? No. 300 feet, square feet, floor. We add this here. There we go. We can see it's been added. Where are we? 305, right down there. Room ID 7, room type 1, all this information.